Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6:30, and I would like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, September 25th to order. Firstly, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, who have provided stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. May I have a mover and second to receive the near-term agenda and today's agenda of the regular council meeting be adopted as presented? Okay, that's Grove and Jordison. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Motion passed. Release of in-camera resolutions. The resolution released from the September 11th special in-camera council meeting is that staff be authorized to work with Arts and Culture Colwood Society to establish a lease agreement for 170 Goldfinch Road for the use as a community arts center. Under Mayor's message, as many of you know, council, all of council attended the annual Union of BC Municipalities meeting conference in Vancouver last week. It was great because we were all split up and went to different sessions, and we had the opportunity to also meet with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure and with the Minister of Health himself. And so I'm glad to announce right now that we are working very closely with both the West Shore Primary Care Society and the ministry to get an urgent care or walk-in clinic back in Colwood. And we hope to announce something very soon on that. And in the longer term, we're also working with the Ministry of Health right now on attracting family doctors to Colwood. So, you know, some people might say this is outside our swimming lane, but we've got to do something about our situation. I believe the last number I saw, 52% of the Colwoodians do not have a family doctor. Okay, that's all I have for messages. Does any council have anything they want to add? Nope, seeing none, I'll just move on. Adoption and receive minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held August 28th and on September 11th. Mr. Jensen moves, seconder, Councillor Day. And are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous, motion passed. Public participation. There were, this was a first since I've been mayor here. There's no written submissions, and there was none that were attached after the cutoff time. That's a first. But I would absolutely welcome members of the public to come up and speak. You have 2 minutes. If you could just identify who you are and your address, that would be great. Ms. Brown.
Hello, Carol Brown, Citizens Environment Network in Colwood. Scenic is here tonight to express support for the agenda item 9.3, the 2022 Provincial Climate Reporting and Colwood Greenhouse Gas Emission Inventory. We appreciate the continued leadership by Colwood City to significantly drop GHG emissions in all areas of corporate management, whether in-house or by contracted services, as noted in the goals of the local government climate action plan to be reported on this evening. The LGCAP provides Colwood with funding for climate action initiatives. We appreciate the work done by city staff to ensure that this funding goes towards a significant and timely reduction in GHG emissions. Strong climate action is expected to increase considerably in the near future with the implementation of the recently passed Colwood Climate Action Plan. This plan is packed full of meaningful and doable methods for reducing GHGs by the city and by its citizens. Our city GHGs did actually rise somewhat in 2022. And it is now more important than ever to instigate a sharp downward trend. Scenic was pleased to see in the report increased fleet transition to electric vehicles, as well as small electric equipment such as trimmers, and we hope the inclusion of more electric leaf blowers. We thank the staff for their efforts in moving forward on the goals set by the city in reducing GHGs in all ways possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Next.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Mojgan Mohaqqeq and I live at 2522 Mill Hill Road. Thank you all for granting me the opportunity to speak today. I am truly grateful for your time and attention. As a recent immigrant who made the journey from my home country of Iran to our wonderful community here on the West Shore in 2016, my family and I settled here and we decided to invest in a local business. While I took on the role of managing its finances, including bookkeeping and handling accounts payable and receivable, I found myself facing numerous challenges and uncertainties, just as any new immigrant might. However, amidst the ups and downs of life, I discovered something truly remarkable: the power of art. Art has a unique ability to bring happiness, relaxation, and a sense of release from life's tensions. My daughter, too, found her passion in the world of art, particularly through dance. She began her journey in the art world during her high school years and later pursued her passion at a ballet school. Regrettably, we encountered a significant hurdle in our pursuit of ballet for her. There was no ballet school for adults here in the West Shore. This lack of local options meant that we had to undertake lengthy commutes to Skymalt or downtown Victoria to ensure she could continue her ballet classes. These hours spent on the road and then waiting to the end of each class became a considerable inconvenience. Drawing upon my own background as an art teacher back in my hometown in Iran, I realized that there is a pressing need for an art and culture center right here in the West Shore. Our community, as wonderful as it is, lacks sufficient amenities for individuals of all ages to engage in art classes and cultural activities. Art in all its forms holds the power to bring joy, relaxation, and a sense of purpose to our lives. It is a means of combating stress, anxiety, and loneliness while allowing us to create something beautiful and deeply meaningful. Art is a universal language that transcends borders, cultures, and backgrounds. Its benefits are not confined to a specific age group. They extend to children, teenagers, adults, and even seniors. By introducing an art center at West Shore, we can foster personal growth, well-being, and a sense of community among our residents. It is not merely an investment in culture, it is an investment in the overall health and happiness of our citizens. On your agenda tonight, you will be looking to appoint Councillor Grove as your representative on the Intermunicipal Committee. I urge you to support this recommendation, as it will truly be an important step towards making this project a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm Dorothy York. I live at 3399 Hatley Drive in Colwood. I've been a 30-year resident and so proud to be so. I think Colwood is the best. There's never been a more compelling time for the mayor and council to stand with their counterparts in our neighboring communities. Let's move an essential initiative forward. An arts and culture center can only be realized with the collective energy of everybody. And I'm asking for you to please appoint David Grove to be the Colwood voice on our intermunicipal community. So we're standing with our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Next, please.
Hi, Andrew Dennis. I live at 2426 Souk Road. I'm just here to talk about item 9.5 on the agenda, which is the storm sewer master plan. Now I realize that there's a housing crisis going on and we need more housing. But for me specifically, we have a potential deal for developers, but it's being stalled quite a bit by a section of storm sewer, the right of way. So I'm hoping that you guys can get that through and then also maybe spend some time to take a look at that little chunk because it's meant to be abandoned, but it's holding up some development on our property. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much. And I know we don't have anyone online, correct, Marcy? Just want to make sure. At this point in time, I would like to go to item 7, which is the delegations, the RCMP 2023 biannual report. I would like to welcome Superintendent Todd Preston, Superintendent of the West Shore RCMP detachment, who will be giving us the presentation. Over to you, Todd. Need you to press the button there.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Well, I'm a slow learner. Yeah, generally what I like to do on these is I like to just go over some of the obvious and then have some bilateral communication with mayor and council here as to some of the questions, concerns that have been brought forward through the chair in relation to policing and security within your community. So the annual performance or the biannual report highlights some of the priorities that we've in consultation with mayor and councils throughout the West Shore. Because it's a integrated regional detachment consisting of 7 communities, obviously some of the priorities are more focused in certain areas, certain communities than others. But saying that, we're obviously very nimble, and as each month passes here, if there's something that pops up in your community that's perhaps not identified as a priority, we're certainly happy to pivot and adjust to that. So you'll see that preventing and reducing the threat of impact of serious and organized crime, enhancing road safety, enhancing relationship and reconciliation with our Indigenous communities, mental health, and youth crime prevention are things that we've identified as priorities for this year. We'll go through some of the statistics, and I got the analyst there to kind of highlight the Colwood stats just a little further past the biannual report. That's the I think the CAO had previously forwarded you that email, and I've given you a hard copy of that this evening here as well. And just to go over some of the statistics there that are relevant to your community. One of the nice things here we've been able to do is to see the service hours. And so that's a thing that we used to be able to do. Then we weren't able to do it, and it appears that we're able to do that again. So that tells you the amount of hours year over year that we've been spending on calls for service in your particular area. So in an integrated, why that's relevant is obviously to see year over year where we're increasing, but also in terms of in a regional detachment, the amount of hours that are being spent in your area compared to others. So you'll see that we have an 8% increase in service time from January 1st to August 31st in service hours. And then we'll go into just some of the, well, first of all, the file count here. And you'll see that the file counts overall were 8% increase, so 261 files year over year. An increase, which is not unlike the other communities. In fact, Langford's is definitely a little higher than that. And I think it's in that 10 or 12% range in View Royal. So year to date, we had 3,401 files compared to 3,140 files this time last year. And this goes to the end of August. And then we break it down in terms of the different types of offenses and different types of occurrences. And most notably, we'll just go through a few here and then we can open that up for questions here. But we got assault with a weapon. We had 13 files representing 117% increase. So that's an increase of 7 files to put it in perspective, though, year over year. But it is obviously a little concerning. And that's primarily domestic related files that were as a result of that offense increase. Business break and enters, we had a 43% increase, but again, we're talking 3 file increase over year. And then our analyst was able to note that we had a pattern at Garden Works. The secure fence had been continually breached, and that was 3 of the offenses, and the individuals were targeting outdoor cache areas. The residential break-ins, a 29% increase, but again, that's 2 files. And that might have had something to do with mental health increase. We had two files, which we don't normally have, protest in your area. And we had none last year, but it was the public service employee strike. And we had complaints of the protesters were blocking the highways. The extortion files, we had 9 files representing a 13% increase. And of those, a lot of that is social media platforms. And we do see more and more of that over the years. Sextortion, we see, pictures being reported onto the social platforms and individuals being extorted for cash in exchange for not releasing those photos. Oftentimes, those are extremely difficult files to investigate because they're oftentimes around the world and certainly out of jurisdiction. Fraudulent, we had 27 files representing 13% increase. Lots of Facebook scams, and this is where it kind of pulls your heartstrings because you start to see the seniors being targeted a lot of times during those offenses. So, I think an education piece is what we really need to focus on and continue to focus on, educating our seniors about these scams that are all too often on the internet. Harassing communications, a 38% increase, 8% compared to last year at this time. And again, I think this one here, we're dealing with unwanted individuals. And so I think we're seeing some more unhoused mental health and addictions. And you're going to start to see some of the certain files that are going to be increased as a result of that. For instance, the trespass, we had 31 files, 147% increase. So that's substantial, 25% more files compared to last year. And, we're seeing it at your library here outside the Wanafuka Rec Center. We're starting to see some unhoused that are trespassing and disturbing certain individuals that are trying to access that area. And there's some open drug use, but I'll get back to the open drug use in a minute here. We had indecent acts. We have been having issues on the Galloping Goose. So we've been focusing with our bike section, putting members on the Galloping Goose there, but we did have a number of indecent acts, 4 files in your area representing 100% increase from last year. There's no real patterns to that. It's just individuals exposing themselves to passerbyers on the trails. Trespass at night, and again, I think I would probably coin that to unhoused. A lot of times we're getting those files. These individuals don't have housing, and oftentimes we're finding that they have addictions and they're finding themselves in people's yards looking for shelters. Weapon possession, 8 files, 167% increase compared to same time last year. And there's really no discernible patterns for that. And then I'll just, again, the suspicious persons in the mental health, we're seeing some increases. And I think if you talk to EHS, if you talk to the ER, everybody's seeing the same increases. This is a societal problem right now that is not there's no quick fix. There's no arresting our way out of this situation. This is going to take a collaborative approach with obviously our health authority, with the local, provincial, federal government, as well as with your local police departments to try to get a handle on these issues. Obviously, traffic is something that is oftentimes a significant priority for this particular community. And so I had them run these stats for August, just to give me some statistical data here. In Colwood, we wrote 30. This is just our traffic units, not our general duty. So we have a corporal and 3 constables, corporal and 4 soon here, actually corporal 4 now, that are assigned to traffic services. So we have 5 members that do traffic. That's all they do is traffic services for the West Shore. And in the month of August, they wrote 38 warnings. They charged 26 people. And what's of particular interest is there was also 12 no insurance tickets. And that's definitely on the rise, from my understanding from speaking with the corporal in charge of that section, is that the no insurance. So last year, you'll note that they took off the bell tags on the back of vehicles. We have 3 or 4 vehicles that have automatic license plate readers. So they just go around those vehicles, which I know it's kind of surprising because I think most people thought that every vehicle was outfitted with one of those. They're not. They're expensive units. I think they're around $25,000 per unit. And they basically do a 360. So when those vehicles are going, they're reading every license plate automatically that they come across. And so before that, we had 70 members out there individually looking at val tags. And now that we don't have that availability because the val tags aren't there anymore, we rely heavily on these devices, which will be continually to add to the fleet year over year. But I do think that again, times are very difficult right now, and I think there's 2 reasons. One, I think people are just desperate and then risking out the fact that they're not going to have insurance because it's choosing between insurance, gas, food, and shelter. So it's very difficult decisions. And I think often some of the other times is people are just simply forgetting because the val tag used to remind them that when they put their groceries in, they notice that, oh, my val tag's coming due soon. So I think between the 2, I think that's why we're seeing some of that. I'll highlight some of the targeted areas that we're doing here, and I do this so that if there's other areas, and I've told you before that I certainly take direction from Mayor and Council in terms of priorities. If there's areas of significant concern that you're hearing from your constituents, we can certainly focus more time and effort on those areas. But the enforcement that I just previously mentioned in terms of where we've been doing traffic enforcement, we have Machosen Road, Ocean Belmont, Machosen, Island Highway, Goldstream, Kingswood, Lagoon, Latoria, Machosen, Kelly Road, Machosen, Kelly Road, Machosen, Kelly Road, Ocean, the skate park area, Ocean Boulevard, Aldine, VMP, Kelly Road, Goldstream and Whale, Souk, Castlewood, Brookside, Goldstream and Whale, Souk, Braveheart, Island Highway, Ocean Boulevard, Castlewood, Brookside, Whale Road, Souk, Fulton, and again, Whale and Castle. So those are the areas that we've been kind of focusing on with our traffic unit. Like I said, that's not to say that we're not doing traffic in other areas. The general duty members, the other 50, 60 that are in general duty are continuously doing traffic work, but they're also going to calls all day long. So it's as and when they can. And then I wanted to circle back to public consumption. So it's unfortunate. I think a lot of people don't fully understand that in this province right now, as of January, there was the province and Health Canada passed legislation that decriminalized small amounts of illicit drugs, so 2.5 grams of hard illicit drugs, certain drugs there that are no longer, it's no longer an offense to possess 2.5 grams. The spirit or rationale behind that is that the stigma surrounding individuals that are addicted, they're less apt to ask for help if the stigma is that they are considered a criminal. And so it's a 3-year pilot project in British Columbia. And only British Columbia is where the pilot project is taking place. As a result, we've seen a significant increase in calls of individuals, using drugs in open places. And I think you'll see that the Health Canada recently passed some other exemptions, 15 meters within parks and certain areas there that you cannot no longer use. So it gives the police the ability to move individuals the police are not looking to charge individuals with simple possession. And I think it's been like that for many, many years. But we do want to have the ability to move people away from our children. And so that they're not exposed to toxic substances. So I said a lot. I'll perhaps pause here and then open the floor up for questions from.
Great, thank you very much. It's an excellent report, Todd, so I was really impressed with it.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Jensen, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Superintendent. I think there's a lot of very granular, detailed information, which we do appreciate. I guess some of the concerning parts is, not surprisingly, the number of hours spent on some of the mental health related stuff. That's a great graph that you've included there, because we all know those calls are getting more complex and taking up more time. So I can appreciate that it's a time sucker for your officers.
Yeah, and a point I should probably bring is with the resources that we obtained last year from all of the communities. As you know, we pool all our resources. It's not like it's Colwood, RCMP, and Langford. We're all one. So, but with that, we use the resources. We put 3 bodies, 3 new members to a mental health team to deal with, a lot of our unhoused and individuals that are suffering from addictions. We're just waiting for the province. We have the members identified. We are ready to start work in that area. We're just waiting for the province. The province we were I believe actually the only one on Vancouver Island with this last pool of money. I think there was 9 locations. Don't quote me on that, but that received funding from the province. And so we can have practitioners working with our police department. So it'll be a CAR 6-7 program like other municipalities have. And we will have that up and running. We're hoping to have it running next month, perhaps October, November. But we really are kind of at the mercy of practitioners being identified that can start working with our members. So to your point about time and energy spent, we're hoping to really kind of move that away from our frontline policing officers into individuals that have more of a health background and that are perhaps more suitable to deal and have the aptitude to deal with individuals suffering from these addictions.
Thank you. And I didn't see in here, but perhaps you can, unless I missed it, but perhaps you can speak surrounding the school liaison program. As you know, we all know some jurisdictions have chosen to go in a different direction. I just wonder if you can speak about your relationship with our school district, where that's at, and whether you anticipate any changes in that regard.
Yeah, so the West Shore, we actually have two school districts within our boundaries, 62, 61. And so within 61, we've obviously lost the ability to be in a number of schools, namely a lot of interaction with our Squamish and Esquimalt First Nation children. And I know that the chief and councils are certainly trying to change that and mitigate the negative effects that's going to have on their children. As far as 62, we have an absolute we have a fantastic relationship with that school district, with all the schools in this area, and we are in those schools literally every school day. We have members from our community policing section that are in those schools. We teach in those schools. We do events in those schools. We provide mentorship in those schools. We do camping trips. We do so much in those schools, and there's just so much benefit. And it is so nice to see that we're welcomed in school district 62. And like I said, there's really little room for improvement because we have such a positive relationship there.
Great. The only other thing I made note of is I think it's in the quarterly report that a significant spike in the OCC category, other criminal code. Any insights there? Is this just happenstance? And what does that really include?
Yeah, I'd have to get our analysts, but other criminal code are obviously things that don't fit in. If you review or if you refer to the document I just gave you this evening, it breaks down. It gives a much more detailed breakdown. Okay, so I think you'll be able to see some of the data that you're looking for there, but just on the cusp, it's difficult for me to answer that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll have a look at it. Thank you. I'll yield, Mr.
Thank you very much, Councilor Wilson.
Thank you for this report. I think I don't necessarily have a question, just more of a red flag to me that concerns me. And I'm sure many people with the decriminalization of toxic drug use and public use, the Trespass Act and the trespass at night, those numbers concern me, just kind of skimming through. Anytime you see an increase in crime of any kind in a community, it's concerning, but those specifically, because you mentioned we're seeing a lot of the unhoused, a lot of them have mental health issues. And, they're dealing with substance abuse and whatnot, and they're starting to encroach on neighborhoods. So those are the kind of things that just reaffirm to me that we have a bigger problem than we can handle, and that we need more help from the province. But it's more just a comment, just for me talking out loud, that this is a big problem. And how can, the community deal with that when it's happening in their own backyard?
Yeah, I mean, and I would certainly encourage you to speak with your, the province and outline any concerns that you have. I will say from the Commerce District, obviously Langford has a large commercial base there, and we are hearing on a daily basis, some significant concerns. And I bring that to your attention because I know that you guys are certainly expanding at a torrid pace here in terms of commerce and new development. And so, we're finding that these individuals unfortunately are using in their bathrooms, in these merchants' bathrooms, and passing out at the tables. And certainly it's affecting their businesses. Those are the concerns that have been brought forth. We have had an informal meeting with a lot of the business owners off of Goldstream, and we intend on putting out another information session on basically best practices on how to, surround yourself with being safe. If you're running a business, some of the concerns that we can help try to mitigate, what procedures, what other people are doing. So our comms team is set to do that here in the coming weeks. And so we'll certainly extend the invite out to all the communities. We'll be having that at Castro's, I believe, on Pete Road, with all the business owners there, just to talk about some strategies to try to mitigate some of the issues that you described there.
Can you tell me if most of these files are related to the unhoused?
Without
You
pointing
have
without pointing, it'd probably be remiss of me to say that the majority are, but I mean, I know that the calls for service, I read the calls for service every day, and there is many calls for service that are dealing with the unhoused and mental health addictions.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much. I'll just end with some questions here. I mean, the data is overwhelming, but it's interesting because I can't contextualize it. Like, I don't know, with the numbers that you have, I don't know if it's good or bad. I have no idea, because I look at it and I go, oh, see this big increase, 100%. But then I'm thinking, well, is that 100% now make us like everybody else, or is it good or bad? So I guess my question is it possible? And, I was just looking at your data and how it could be possibly sliced up so it makes a little more sense to many of us here, I think. Is because at first glance, when you look at Langford's numbers, you go, oh, but then you contextualize it and you go, well, their population is 2.5 times our size. So you go, oh, wait a second here, it's not that bad if you use a certain census and you do a per capita calculation. You go, oh, wait a second here, we're about the same. They're not way worse than us. So I guess so. That's my first question. Can we cut this per capita to, whoever's doing your stats right now does a great job, but I think if they cut it that way, it contextualizes the things a little more, because there's no benchmark. I don't think there's
No, you're absolutely right. I will say you have a very safe community, and I'll say that loud and clear. You have a safe community. You're a growing community. You're not alone. I mean, every community in this province right now is going through the exact same growing pains, if you will. We have an epidemic here of an enormous proportion here. We've never really faced, these significant issues like this before. So yeah, we can certainly try. If you send me kind of what you're after, I can certainly try to slice up a little more. But when I read these stats, I don't want to mislead the public to think that this is not a safe community. You live in a very safe community. You just need to be cognizant of the fact that things are on the rise. There are challenges, and it's not just mental health and addictions. However, it is certainly at the forefront right now. I can assure you that policing has dramatically changed over the years, and our role, the amount of mental health and addictions calls that we get on a daily basis or have some influence on the call is astronomical, how much it's increased. And it's affecting everything from EHS to Emerge to family doctors to nurses. It affects every gamut here. So, but I got to make sure that I state very loud and clear that, yes, there's certainly some significant increases, but overall, you are a very safe community.
Yeah. Because like I said, when you first look at it, you kind of get, oh my God, we got a big problem here. But then, I don't have that context of like, is this really a problem or is it not? So anyways, the second question I have is, you were telling me the streets that you monitor speed, like speed seems to be, we get at least a weekly email about speed. And we just cannot put speed bumps everywhere in the city. We're getting to be known as the city of speed bumps. But is there, by your data, do you track like what are the worst areas right now?
Yeah,
so you have that data then.
We can give you, I believe our analysts gave you the hotspots for traffic related. I can give you, I can certainly give you where accidents are. I can give you where we've, conducted speed traps. I have it literally in front of me here where I'm happy to give that information to you. I would encourage you again, and every member of council, when you get those emails, I can't fix the problem if I don't know about the problem. And so I kindly ask that you just send me the email. I'm personally probably not going to be the one out there running beam, but we'll certainly get that to our general duty members every morning, every evening. We have watch briefings, so if we're aware that, hey, this is an issue, the members will focus time on that, and same with our traffic services. So,
and so my next question is, I just have two more here. Is like you just told me something I didn't know, that you have something, just a few cars that have that tracker. They look at a license plate. So do you also get ICBC to give? Is there a problem now that does ICB keep stats that there's X number of cars that used to be insured, now there's Y now? So hey, be on the lookout for this. Is it becoming a growing problem? I'm feeling that you're saying it is right now.
No, insurance is definitely on the rise. So like I said, I speculate, one is because times are very difficult here, and two, because people oftentimes, and I think I choose to believe them, that they legitimately forgot to renew their insurance because they got the renewal, they put it in a bundle of paper by their computer desk, they forgot about it, and they don't look at their tag that gives them a visual reminder. And so I think that's a portion of it. And like I said, a portion, I think times are tough.
Okay. So second to last question right now. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
But with this new legislation, the 15-meter perimeter around playgrounds right now, is that even an issue right now in the West Shore? Would you say that's an issue?
It is an issue. It's becoming an issue. Take for instance a bus stop right now. You can legally smoke a crack pipe in a bus stop with children beside you. That's a problem, in at least the police's eyes. That and so we're looking for tools not to arrest and perpetuate the stigma behind and the spirit behind the decrim. We literally want the tools to move individuals along so that perhaps they're not in a state of mind that they realize that there's children over here or down by the skate park or wherever they choose to use their drugs. So we're literally looking for some tools because we're getting more and more calls and there is parks and there's designated parks in certain municipalities. I'm not sure if this one, I can't remember, to be honest, if we have a designated park for overnight camping here, but you know, each community is different in terms of their strategy to try to you know, provide sheltering areas for these individuals while balancing the safety and you know, certain parks. And so you know, obviously that's not a police matter, that's for you to decide that.
Okay, last question, because you got a lot of data in front of me right now, right? So what's that one thing that's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more than one. I wish there was only one. I've been doubling my dose of nighttime magnesium lately, but yeah, I think it's the without question the stress on the members right now. I mean, we've got 20 members that are off. So out of 110 members, we have 20 that are off for various reasons. Now, some of them are maternity, paternity, but there's certainly a stress component. And you know, you saw in Coquitlam last weekend, that weighs heavy on the members, and Shaylin in Burnaby, you know, we lost 2 RCMP officers in the last 2 years. The stress of you know, the mental health component, the workload that keeps piling on. And I think a lot of it comes from the mental health challenges that we're having. Like, I can't emphasize enough how policing has changed from what it was to what it is. And so the one thing that keeps me up is trying to make sure that we can remain happy and healthy at our workplace here. We've been able to bring in 10 extra members, surplus members. So we're down about 10 members right now, out of, so about 10%, 15%, somewhere in that range right now. But yeah, that's I would say that's what's keeping me up.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Jordison.
Hi, Superintendent Preston. I just had a question about, I guess with communities growing in size and population, that sort of thing, would we tend to see as much mental health and addictions, homelessness that we're seeing, or do you feel it's due to the decriminalization and public use regulations right now?
Yeah, I don't know that I don't think the one precipitates the other. Like, I don't think it's because the decrim that we're seeing the homelessness. I think you're seeing the public consumption piece. And so that's the you know, the spirit behind the province's mandate with Health Canada is that the individuals won't use in a dark basement. They'll use where people can see them, where they can be saved and revived, and not using alone and not feeling like they're a criminal and they're asking for help. So that's the spirit behind why Health Canada and the province has passed that legislation. In terms of, you know, the community growth here, you are no different than every other community and I'm pretty in tune with a lot of the communities, and everybody is facing the same challenges that you are. And so you're going to have to make some, you know, strategic decisions, obviously, as a council, in terms of, you know, are we zoning parks, or obviously making sure that the e-commerce is aware and has the tools necessary, whether that be security or what have you. I know other municipalities are doing that. The thefts are rampant right now in and across, not just West Shore. I know it's everywhere, but I see the stats for here, and it's horrific. The amount of thefts, and so our small businesses is really suffering from that, obviously.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent.
Thank you.
That's great. Really appreciate it, your efforts, and excellent report. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Have a great night.
Okay, next delegation, two-part here of CRD governance concepts and engagement strategy on transportation governance. I think we have John Hicks here, he's the senior transportation planner with the CRD, who will be providing a CRD presentation, and will be followed by our corporate officer, Marcy, along with the results of our survey. Over to you, John.
I was just avoiding charades. Okay. Hello, and thank you for inviting me here tonight to put on this presentation. My name is John Hicks. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the CRD, and I'm joined by my colleague, Natalie Bendringer. Yep, thank you. In today's presentation, I'll cover the rationale for this work on governance while also providing background information on transportation in the region. I will then touch on the governance workbook and look at next steps. I'll close out with a discussion and questions you may have. There's a lot of information to cover in this presentation. We can come back to discuss any of the slides in more detail should you have questions. I'll start with the rationale for this work. We are here today because transportation is a priority for the Capital Regional District Board and for residents across the region. A strategic priority for the 23-2026 CRD Board is to present options for changes in transportation governance in the region, including a transportation authority. Staff in the CRD Board need to hear from the region's local governments, electoral areas, and agency partners who deliver transportation services to understand what changes you believe will help us achieve our shared transportation goals. The region has 3 transportation goals. The goals are set out in the Regional Transportation Plan and were confirmed in 2021 again by the CRD Board. The goals are to ease traffic congestion in the AM and PM peak hours, support higher rates of walking, cycling, and transit, and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. The CRD currently delivers work on the transportation front in a few ways. Staff provide regional scale policy, planning, and data collection. We operate and maintain a regional trail system that includes a Galloping Goose, the Lochside, and the ENN regional trails. The CRD also plays a coordinating function, hosting a transportation working group made up of local government and agency staff representatives. This group shares information and works towards consistent approaches to planning, policy, and service delivery. Finally, the CRD does play a governance role through the CRD Transportation Committee. This committee reports to the CRD Board and provides oversight for the items listed on the slide. This following section focuses on transportation in the Capital Regional District, looking at our priorities and regional scale objectives. Governance is about decision-making, how decisions are made, who is involved, who pays, and who is accountable for implementation. In the CRD, the current governance structure is mode-specific. As the table up here will show, each jurisdiction has responsibility for 1 or 2 modes. At present, the CRD has very few tools to advance regional priorities. The focus of this engagement is to understand what tools you as local governments need and the level of agreement across the region to implement those tools. We want to build a system that works. We saw in the last slide that there are a lot of jurisdictions delivering transportation services. The Regional Transportation Plan, adopted by the CRD Board in 2014, provides high-level direction to coordinate work across those jurisdictions. It does it in 2 ways, through the Regional Multimodal Network, which is shown on the map, and in your workbook as well, and through outcome statements in the Regional Transportation Plan. Each jurisdiction is responsible for implementing the Regional Transportation Plan. There are 4 key actions that support implementation: planning and policy, infrastructure, service delivery and programming, land use, and behavior change. In 2021, the CRD Board approved 13 transportation priorities. The priorities are grouped by the type of action the CRD Board and the 13 local governments can take. The advocate priorities relate to matters that are outside what local governments and the region control. We can rely on other jurisdictions to deliver these. This is where you will find priorities related to transit and our highway system. The Act priorities relate to matters that local governments can control and to matters that cross jurisdictional boundaries that require greater coordination, while the pivot items are long-term actions. You can see up there, it relates to rail link and West Shore passenger ferry in particular. The next few slides illustrate the nature of travel in the region. This map shows that most trips occur within and between sub-regions. Colwood is located in the West Shore sub-region, along with Langford, Mechosen, Highlands, and Sook. For the West Shore, you can see that a majority of travel is happening between the West Shore and the core sub-region. The core includes Victoria, Saanich, Oak Bay, Esquimalt, and View Royal. Household trip volumes between the West Shore and core have gone against the overall regional trend of declining household trips. This slide goes one level deeper and shows the top 5 origins for trips for Colwood in the morning peak. There is significant internal circulation within the municipality, meaning trips both originate and finish in the same municipality. That's the curved line in the center, the circular line. And then we show trips from Saanich East, Saanich West, Mechosen, Sook, and most significantly from Langford. This emphasizes that Colwood is increasingly a destination for non-Colwood residents, and that Colwood's road network is playing a growing regional role. We know from travel patterns that residents expect a high degree of mobility in their everyday lives. They live, work, and recreate across local government boundaries and wish to move easily across the region. They also expect quality service, regardless of who's delivering it. I'll now move on to the purpose of this engagement. This slide shows the iterative progression of changes needed to ultimately arrive at a new transportation authority. The slide shows these as levels, as CRD staff do not yet have enough information to scope options for board and local government consideration. This is where you come in. CRD staff and CRD board need to understand the types of changes that you are looking for and that you can support to build these levels out into options that can be analyzed for implications. At this point, we need some understanding of what the region can support. What is important about these levels is that they build upon each other. Level 1 relates to organizational changes within the CRD needed to consolidate their existing transportation functions. Level 2 looks to expand CRD authority so teams like ours can do more to support movement towards our shared mobility goals. This could be in relation to things like funding, behavior change, for example. Level 3 is focused on a new authority. Changes in level 1 and level 2 can be made through CRD service establishment, which is within the control of the CRD board and local government. Changes in level 3 require decision-making from the province, as it would require changes to legislation. In order to take a first step in this board term, staff recommend that changes be focused on what CRD and local governments can control. This means focusing on changes in level 1 and 2. The engagement is with the region's 13-member municipalities, 3 electoral areas, and our agency partners. First Nations have been invited and to participate, should they be interested. Going forward, work will be scoped so that nations can join the process when they are ready. The scope of the engagement is to test which areas require regional focus, looking at matters where there is consensus to move forward. Consensus is required, as any changes requiring a service establishment by law will need support from municipal governments. We also want to understand decision-making preferences related to funding, planning, policy, and service delivery. Finally, we want to explore opportunities and constraints related to these changes. What is out of scope for this engagement is to revisit planning and priority decisions that are already set out. This means we are not looking for input on the regional transportation plan or the multimodal network. We are not looking for changes in transportation priorities. Finally, we are not looking at this point in time to amend any authorities set by the province and legislation. The workbook package contains 3 documents: background information with links to detailed reports, a questionnaire, and a glossary. As noted in the questionnaire, the CRD is asking for your council to complete 1 questionnaire, endorse it by a resolution of council, and return it to the CRD by September 29. The survey questions are deliberately focused and pointed. The survey was intentionally designed this way to avoid the need for too much subjective analysis. Recognizing that council and staff have already completed the workbook, I will skip over the next few slides. The work done to complete this workbook to date by council and staff is greatly appreciated. This brings us to the next steps in this process. We are here in the summer of 2023, engaging 13 local governments, 3 electoral areas, and our agency partners. This fall, our team will analyze the input and report back to the CRD board on the level of consensus for change. Looking more big picture, the timeline shows next steps over the 23 to 26 CRD board term. 2023 and 2024 would be used to prepare options for further engagement and turn those options into a proposed service. 2024 would be used to complete the service feasibility work and enact a service establishment bylaw pending direction. There would be time for additional consultation with local governments in this step, including potentially a forum of councils. In 2025, staff would implement the required internal changes to increase service levels and prove that a service is feasible, measured against performance indicators. Also starting in 2025 and pending level of support, a business case for a new authority would be developed, which could include transit integration. For 2026 and beyond, we would advocate for legislative change and implement a new authority as directed. The timing depends on the level of consensus that can be achieved between the region, local government, and our agency partners. It also depends on approvals that are outside of regional district and local government control. By the end of the board term, success is that the region has taken an achievable first step towards changing authorities. As shown in the governance level, this step could be as incremental as consolidating or combining CRD transportation functions to as big as new CRD authorities for funding and prioritizing projects. I want to emphasize that it is essential to consider changes the board and local government can control versus changes the province needs to enact at this point in time. I want to leave you with what others have done. I won't go into this table in too much detail. It's here to illustrate the results of a jurisdictional scan looking at transportation authorities in Vancouver, New Zealand, and Halifax. It shows there are different ways to set up a transportation authority, but what is most important in the end is that it works for the communities in question and moves these communities towards achieving their mobility goals. What did we learn? We learned that another level of government created at each of the transportation authorities for the purpose of improving mobility. This suggests there is a need for a strong business case for change. We also learned that it took time for each of these authorities to become fully operational. This signals that we'll need to deliver any changes in increments and supports the levels I spoke about earlier. Finally, we learned that success needs to be built from a solid base. Transportation authorities that make decisions about mode integration, land use, and funding have greater control over mobility outcomes. And I'll open for any questions.
Thank you very much. Great presentation, John. Open it up for any questions. Councillor Day.
Thanks. I think I understood from what you said that this new CRD service is not in place as yet, that you're still working to develop the plan before bringing that forward for us to endorse or embrace, if that is the case.
Through the mayor. Yes, at the moment, we don't have an actual transportation service. We have a number of transportation functions. This is just a first step in an iterative process. So this is a bit where we're coming out to hear what the municipalities have to say, what our electoral areas have to say, and our agency partners. From that, we'll get that information, we'll review and analyze it, and then we'll come back with a proposal based on the feedback that we have received, and then bring that back out for consideration.
So one of the difficulties that I have found in trying to understand how a regional transportation service would help is that BC Transit is already our service provider. So what does the CRD Transportation Authority bring to that discussion that we don't already have?
Okay, through the mayor. VRTC, as we know, is the governing body for transit in this region. It operates under its own legislation, has its own authority specifically related to transit. Some of the things that we have heard is that there's a desire to have more integration between the different modes of transportation, so that the Ministry of the Highways, the local road networks, and our land use planning are more integrated. And it is hoped that there may be some capacity, be it through some future role down the track in terms of a decision-making role within transit, or even as a more centralized advocacy piece where there is a potential for the board to advocate on priorities for transit in a realm perhaps outside of what BC Transit does at the moment.
Okay, and what I understand from working with transit in the past is that they can be very challenged based on the resourcing that they have to deliver the service. And I found that some of the high usage areas are not well represented in the planning, including places like our hospitals, which are major employers and community resources. Also, our universities and colleges tend to be sharing the same routes, which isn't working well for whoever comes second in the stop lineup. And also our police departments and our fire halls are increasingly challenged from the perspective of it might make a lot of sense for their members to be able to commute using transit, but utilize the vehicles that are already in place for them at the departments. Is that something that the authority could work with?
At this stage, we're not, sorry, through the mayor. At this stage, we're not quite clear what that may look like. But if you do have feedback along those lines, I would highly recommend you put that in with your with your comments, and we can definitely follow up on that as well. That's why we're here. We're here to hear what your major concerns are, and how we can move forward. What tools that you were hoping to see to bring forward those goals and objectives that you may have, and that are identified in the regional transportation plan.
Okay. And also, I'm trying to find a very polite way to put this, but there's a lot of competition within this region that sometimes lands at the CRD table between different sized municipalities. Have you considered a way to minimize that competition in this regional service?
Through the mayor, we've definitely heard concerns in previous consultation with our municipal governments in terms of the way that some decisions are made in relation to transportation. I know that the West Shore did raise concerns last time we had this discussion. And I think what's important is that once again, that's documented very clearly in those responses, and we can come back and identify that as something that needs to be examined and as a potential issue that we need to flag, and then come back and seek further input from you as we move along.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Jensen?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for this. Some very interesting ideas, and no doubt it'll be a process that'll take a number of years. And I think it's a move in the right direction. However, as all things CRD related, along the same lines, but maybe a little more bluntly than Councillor Day, seem to be very core area focused. Perhaps we could change the voting to trips, per community, because then it looks like the West Shore might actually, get a little more juice in the process. So I will be watching with interest to watch this unfold and just see what comes up. A great, for instance, recently were decisions around Galloping Goose Trail in the Saanich area there. Yes, there's probably a lot of trips in Saanich, but we're still waiting for portions to be paved out here. And whereas Saanich is embarking upon some nice refinements like lighting, what have you, probably entirely necessary. And it's just an example, sort of a core area decision that seems to carry the weight from, the decision making that comes out of the CRD. So I guess that's not really a question. I appreciate the presentation, John. I will watch with interest, and I do think it's a move in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for the presentation, John. It was, I just have two questions myself. The first one is, if this is, wasn't too sure, is this an all 13 municipalities have to agree to this before it can become an entity? Is that how that works?
That hasn't yet been determined. What we're trying to do is see which areas we can get consensus in. So if there are different areas that we have consensus in and some areas that we don't, then that's, I think, something that we can then come back. Or if we can see that there is a significant divide, then perhaps it gives us an opportunity to come back and really hone down on those areas where we see there is more potential to move forward. The intent of this type of service is definitely to make it something which works, not something which can cause friction between each other, but something to get those bigger projects, get that momentum going, covering those areas where there may be gaps at the moment. And if that looks like a sub-regional or a regional model, we're unclear.
So my next question is, with all the survey results that we have some draws because someone didn't answer the question. Now we had 6 responses, and so some are draws. So are you expecting us to break the draws? Is that what's happening? Like how are you collecting this data, I guess, is the bottom line? Are you just looking at everyone's results and then putting it into and analyzing it that way, or are you expecting us to sit there and break the draws?
Ideally, we would have had a clear answer, but we acknowledge that sometimes that just isn't a possibility. So what we are going to do, we'll analyze it. You would by no means be the only ones who have come to 1 or 2 areas where they couldn't get consensus, but we can see basically where the majority of the votes are going, or at least the direction that it's going. And what we can do is basically see if, as we're analyzing everything else, to see if that slight swing would have made a substantial difference. Ideally, we would have a clear decision, but.
Okay, so it's okay for us to submit the raw data as we have it right now. Then is.
Yeah, I've seen the responses, and if that's what the council chooses to do, then we can definitely accept it that way.
Okay, it's probably less painful. So, okay, no, that's great. So will we see the total aggregate results from all 13 municipalities at some time?
The intent is to come back and show you the process that we've worked through. So as we get that, it'll come back through to the committee and then to the board. And then you'll get an indication of what process we used, what the findings were, where we could reach consensus, where we could see larger divides. So I would definitely encourage that if there are any areas that you feel are gaps with the work that is happening at the moment, please just add that to your actual list.
Excellent. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you.
Marcy, is it your turn now, or you doing a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's not really a presentation, but so in response to Mr. Hicks' presentation, he made mention that there was a questionnaire that was to be filled out collectively by council. So it has gone to all members of council. We had 6 responses to it. Staff have compiled the results into one final questionnaire. There are 2 questions that had a tie vote on it for which one to respond to. So those are the ones that I'm hoping that council will take a look at and try and make a decision, and then endorse the workbook collectively for the CRD. So I'm just trying to bring up the questionnaire to share with you. Just 1 second.
So if I interpreted what Mr. Hicks said, it doesn't matter. We can submit it just the way it is. Is that correct, Mr. Hicks? Did I interpret you correctly?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Hicks, would you mind just coming up to the podium? Thank you.
Ideally, we would have a clear answer, but we acknowledge that that's sometimes not possible. But if it could be, then that would be great. But if not, then we can work around it.
That may be a separate meeting altogether, Marcy. That's my only concern. Okay, go ahead, please.
So I do have the completed booklet up here, and I could just highlight the two questions that were a tie 3-3. One is highlighted here under transit, to allocate transit resources towards local transit routes in neighborhoods. And the other is allocate transit resources toward frequent regional transit routes connecting high usage areas along transit oriented corridors. I don't know if you wanted to consider that right now, or I'll take your lead.
Counselor Day.
No, you.
Oh, Counselor
Sorry,
Jordison.
I just wanted to say, like, is there a reason we didn't all fill it out? Like, we were all asked to fill it out.
I'm
Why
not-
don't we have 7?
I'm not going to go there right now. I'm just trying to get through this right now.
Well, I think it's an important thing that we need to do. So I
Point taken. Thank you. Counselor Day.
Thank you. So had I spoken first, you would have had the answer. It's my fault. I didn't fill out my booklet. I was I had difficulty with this issue. And then I also was traveling. So I don't know what the mayor's preference would be. I certainly could offer some input on the two ties if that would be helpful.
That would
And
probably
I-
be the most expedient.
And I am prepared to do so. So my concern around these questions is that I wanted to be sure that the data wasn't used to achieve an outcome, and I wasn't clear on the process. So I wasn't sure if where we were at the CRD table in terms of whether this was an existing service that was already approved, or if we were still contemplating it. So since transit resources being allocated either towards local routes to neighborhoods or towards frequent regional transit routes connected with high usage areas, my vote would be towards allocating them to frequent regional transit routes using high transit areas, such as Royal Bay. And it's important to me that when we look at that data, we're considering hospitals and major employers and other community resources. And the other question in regards to grants is only to collectively pursue grants for priority projects identified on the network.
Got it, Marcy. Anything else you want to cover on that?
No, not from me, Your Worship, but we do need, if you're happy with the completed version of this with those two ties decided, if you can endorse it to be forwarded to CRD. Thank you.
So everyone's had a chance to look at it. So I'm just looking for a motion to let me endorse it. Okay, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Olson seconds it. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? It's unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Got your tie settled. Thank you. Okay, first item under unfinished business, the Wanafika Performing Arts Center Society. And the recommendation right now is that Councillor David Grove, be appointed to the West Shore Arts and Culture Center Intermunicipal Committee as the City of Colwood representative. Okay. Councillor Jensen, Councillor Day seconds it. Discussion. I just have a couple comments. If I can get 2 amendments I will absolutely endorse this. I will absolutely endorse this. I guess the only thing that is, I didn't like in it was, that just sort of, municipal staff are welcome to attend meetings as observers and advisors. I don't know if I like that statement in there. I mean, you're the rep. We don't have staff going to any other committees right now. I'd like to see that removed, and the only other one is that, your meetings are really bold once a month. Wow. I don't think we have any other committee that sits once a month except for planning and land use. So I guess that was one that was sort of, I scratched my head at a little bit, but I mean, it's not a showstopper, but the one about having staff attend these things was a showstopper for me. Okay, sure, sorry. Councillor Grove?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that staff attending could be removed. From my perspective, that's not a problem. I'm not sure that we're here to set the terms of reference at this particular moment, but if so, that's fine by me. And your second one, sorry, drew a blank here. What's the number of meetings? Correct. So where did I see that?
If you're fine with that, I mean, I'm okay with that, but I just want, wow.
Yeah, I know. Monthly meetings, I'm fine with less. I mean, you're asking the wrong guy. And when this was drawn up, we consulted with the PACs folks who had various elements were here to satisfy their board of directors desires to be in there. And I don't think frequency of meeting is a problem. Make it quarterly. There was something in here. I thought it was awkward. Committee members, number 3, that the work and findings to the respective councils regularly, monthly, or at most quarterly. I think it should read at least quarterly, and indeed remove monthly or at most altogether. So the report quarterly is more than sufficient.
Okay.
So I would remove, for my sake, I would remove that. Otherwise, because
under those conditions, I'm okay with it.
You're okay with it.
I don't want, it's not that we don't love you, Councillor Grove, but we don't want to hear from you every month.
Yeah, I know that. I'm good with that too. So
okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jordison?
I just had, and the only reason I looked into it a bit was just because of your comments from the August 28th meeting, Mayor. And I just keep coming back to the point where it was confirmed by councillors that it was that Councillor Grove was going to, and all the 5 councillors were going to be the eyes and ears. But I see words like prepare, advise, report, communicate, and that kind of contradicts what eyes and ears are for. So I mean, it's your time, David. So if that's if that's fine with you, and I know we're not here to debate the terms of reference or anything, but I just wanted to mention that. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Councillor Olson?
I think I definitely agree with the reduction of the number of meetings for Councillor Grove, but also there was something that came up at a previous meeting, and forgive me, I'm trying to recall exactly, but I believe there was some discussion around councillors being involved in assisting with any funding or grant funding, and that we wanted to exclude ourselves or whomever was appointed from being involved in any acquisition of any funding of any kind. Does anybody recall that? Because I didn't see any language around that. And if you can speak to it, Councillor Grove, that would be great.
Councillor Grove?
yeah, thank you. I don't think so. I don't think it's in here. I don't see it. The funding reference, it's not in here.
Your worship, if I may,
Please, Mr. Earl?
purpose section 4, PACS remains responsible for fundraising to support the Arts Center project.
Yeah.
Well, there's, yeah, that's what I was, okay, so to understand also, I'm familiar with this file, so that's why I indeed volunteered. I think it's important that we as Colwood have ears in the room, and if I can make a positive contribution, I'm happy to be there. I am familiar with the file. I was on this board for 2-3 years, and so the terms of reference was taken, the original draft. We shaved it down quite a bit. It's not an advisory committee. I'm not sure of the definition, but I think I would just ask you to think of the fact that a bricks and mortar arts center is likely a good idea. I say yes to that. And that the idea of getting a group of municipal representatives together into a room to sit and chat about this thing is a good idea. And I think that's how I see it. That's what we're doing. And we'll go from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Grove. At this point in time, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous, motion carried. Okay, we're into new business. The proposed infrastructure committee. It's over to you, Marcy. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So staff were asked to come up with the terms of reference for Infrastructure Advisory Committee. Currently, the City of Colwood has 5 select committees. This would make the 6th. A copy of the proposed terms of reference has been attached to the report for Council's consideration. And just as a quick little overview, the purpose of this infrastructure committee would to create greater facilitation and collaboration of ideas between council and the public. And it would be recommendations related to infrastructure, which would include any infrastructure asset to the city, or includes natural assets, road infrastructure, land, park structures and trails, sewer infrastructure, drainage infrastructure, vehicles and equipment and buildings. So there is a list that was also provided on the what the committee will provide advice on, and it will be things related to the transportation master plan, sewer master plan, stormwater master plan, and the sustainable infrastructure replacement plan. So the proposal membership is for 1 member of council to be appointed as the chair, along with a member of council to be appointed as an alternate, and 5 members from the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I get this started, it's I can say this harebrained idea was mine. You know, it's an important, a very important committee. It's and it's so important that you know, I guess I should have gave you this input before you started the terms of reference, but my idea was to have 2 councillors on this committee because of its importance. So you know, one could sit in as the chair if the other one's missing, but 2 councillors, 4 people from the community is the only thing I would change. You know, I mean, we're going to trial this and see how it works, but I think it's important that we have two councillors on this, as we do with the planning and land use committee. And then I'll just if I can get a motion, or if you have any questions about this right now. Do it, so move. Okay, Councillor Grove moves it, seconder. Okay, Councillor Day. Discussion. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Sorry, is that moved with your amendment there of
Oh.
2 council members and 4 members of the public?
Yes, that's exactly what the motion is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No other questions? Okay, great. I have a motion on the floor. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous, motion carried. Next is we have Carolyn Richmond, on the Housing Accelerator Funding application.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay.
I am also here with Ian Borhill. I'm going to give you a quick presentation to speak to this briefing on the significant grant application that was submitted on behalf of the city for the Housing Accelerator Fund. And then Ian and I can answer any questions you may have. This is a $4 billion fund as part of the federal housing strategy administered by the CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. It's incentive funding described as aiming to drive transformational change to accelerate the housing supply. So Colwood met the three key requirements in applying for this fund. The 7 council approved initiatives that made up an action plan for the fund, meeting projected increases in housing supply. So it was estimated that through the initiatives in the action plan, 415, roughly 415 units could be increased in supply, and also an increase in average annual housing supply growth. And then the third requirement was to have a housing needs assessment within the time period of the requirement. So we met those requirements. We've had some follow-up and provided further information as required. The 7 initiatives that were included in the action plan were council approved initiatives that met the objectives of the fund. These would be initiatives that would be accomplished over the 3-year period of the Housing Accelerator Fund, if Colwood is successful. So the Housing Accelerator Fund framework calculates, as you put through your application, how many units, additional units are incentivized through the action plan, as well as additional top-up funding for affordable housing and other units aside from single family housing or single detached homes. So that puts the estimated funding for Colwood's application at 15 million, over 15,500,000, which is significant funding that could be used for the Housing Accelerator initiatives and the action plan, as well as housing and community related infrastructure. So we realized just before the meeting, unfortunately, that the conclusion next steps part of your briefing was somehow missed in the very final copy you received. So it reads as follows. Staff will keep council informed about the review and potential approval of Colwood's funding application. If successful, a plan for the initiatives and the other options for funding use will be brought forward to council, considering current council priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. The report is excellent, by the way, very, very well done. I actually understood it all. So what wasn't very clear to me was, these are projects that already been identified, right? So it's kind of neat. So, but then you have a statement there saying that, well, we can actually spend it on other things. So other things, can we spend it on potentially public works building? Can we spend it on potentially RCMP building? Is that all within the criteria?
There is a list of, oh, that's not it. There's a list in the fund. I didn't include them all in your briefing, but the RCMP building was actually raised, I believe, by Ian, and confirmed that that could be a potential use.
Public works
Do you want
building?
to, the public works?
Thanks for that question, Your Worship. Yeah, we followed up, and really what the infrastructure funding is meant to do is to support growth-related infrastructure needs. So there's quite a wide range of different options. We just need to tie it back to the growth of the community with respect to housing.
Public works building is.
So certainly, municipal services that are in greater demand as we grow, those related capital projects would be eligible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Much along the mayor's lines, and especially having spent much time reviewing the sewer and stormwater plans for this meeting, it came to my mind whether or not some of this money could be used in those areas where sewer upgrades may be required in order to facilitate that growth. Is that something that would fit?
Thank you. Yes, one of the questions in the application was what potentially that the city could spend it on, and it was for information only, as stated in the application form. However, we did include capital projects stemming from our sewer master plan as one of the potential areas that we'd spend the funding on. As I said, it would need to be tied to incremental growth related to housing in the community.
Thank you.
Councillor Jensen?
Yeah, thank you. And that was my question. Thank you, Ian. I take it we have some housing targets that we're gonna have to hit then in the next number of years. I mean, I take it there's a plan to make sure that we're gonna hit those benchmarks along the way.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen, for that question. So we're not going to be held necessarily to the targets that we put forward. There is a 25% holdback in terms of the monies that would be provided based on our meeting the targets. We're relatively confident, given the trajectory of Colwood's growth, that we'll be able to meet the targets. We feel that what was put forward is relatively reasonable. However, there could be a massive change in the market that changes that. However, you know, they're really just targets for the application as opposed to something we'd be held to. Yeah.
Now, I know we've done our housing needs survey. Have we received any direction on what our targets would be? Like, or is it just anticipated growth, or is there specific hard numbers, this many units of this, that, and the other thing? Or what are these linkages, or how do they define them?
Thank you for that question. So we're going to be returning to council in about 6 to 8 weeks with a revised housing needs assessment. We're going to be bringing forward that assessment based on the 2021 census. That will provide projections and targets related to the understood housing needs of our community. We're also hoping to get into more granular data and projections relating to the type of housing that would be required beyond just the numbers.
Sounds great. This is exciting. Thank you.
It's great. So when do you expect those applications to come in? Is there an anticipated date that you have any ideas?
Oh, thank you. Just to clarify, you're asking when we might hear about the success of our application?
Yes.
The first reporting period starts October 1st, so we anticipate that we would hear very quickly. The timing period is set to September 2026. So yeah, we should know very soon, I would think.
Thanks very much. That's great. Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm just going to go on to the next item, and it's you again, Carolyn.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the briefing about our climate reporting for the province from 2022. Last year, council was provided with a briefing on the first year of the LGCAP provincial program for local government climate action program. And that briefing included information that briefing included information on that reporting, on inventory, and what the LGCAP program was. So this is a follow-up for 2022. Just waiting for the presentation. Just doesn't want to cooperate tonight. All right. Yep. Okay. So this briefing that you have provides an update for 2022. As I mentioned, the provincial reporting requires Colwood to provide an annual report to the province, as well as submitting a corporate greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and that those things be posted publicly. So the year two funding was for 148, just over 148,000. This is a 3-year time period for this funding that we'd get that each year. And so part of that requirement is to have it posted publicly. So we definitely wanted to provide council with the just the new web page where it's linked to. And you can see there that what you have for the greenhouse gas inventory and the provincial reporting is publicly posted on that web page. This is a new web page that has also our new climate action plan and information related and linked for our climate action work. This graph shows you from our greenhouse gas inventory, our corporate emissions since 2017. So you'll see in blue, those are our direct traditional services, the emissions from those services. In orange, those are the emissions from the contracted traditional services, and then green is our total. And so 2022 was a total of 166 tons of CO2 equivalent. The pie chart here just breaks that down and shows you by service area in Colwood where those emissions are coming from. The largest being from our fleet and from recreation. On August 28th, Council adopted the climate action plan, endorsed the new climate action plan, which includes targets for corporate emissions to net zero by 2045 and community target of net zero by 2050. So we definitely have lots of work to do and moving that quickly. Colwood is ramping up our climate action with a new climate action plan directions. We've received our second year allotment from the LG CAP, and staff are working very closely with regional and provincial partners to continue to urgently advance climate action. Just want to yeah, that's about those are the main points of our, our reporting is in there if you have any questions about it, and the inventory is pretty simple. And I guess that one further thing I'll note is that community emissions inventory will be coming from the CRD for this year. The last one was 2020, and they're working on a new one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. I will turn it over to Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. Thanks for this. This is great. Just a question, mostly because I don't recall specifically, but do we include West Shore Parks and Rec in its entirety in our reporting, or is it apportioned out based on the per capita formula?
Through your worship, yes, it is a portion of our per capita portion of the West Shore Parks and Rec emissions.
Regardless of the fact that it exists in our community.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. At our last council meeting, we sort of had a question, and I may be recalling the context incorrectly, but we were looking at what it would take to move up our climate targets, like to 2040 instead of 2050. And just wondered if you could comment on that.
And through your worship, we would, the consultants and staff work together to provide an ambitious plan that from at this point in time with the information we have, we could assure to get to net zero by 2050. If council is interested in a report from staff about what it might take to get to net zero sooner, as in 2040, we could certainly look at that and try to come back with some answers for council about what that might look like.
Okay, I just thought I would flag that so that we know where to get our data from. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. So this is the classic Pareto. That one chart of your GHG inventory, 20% of the service areas cause 80% of the problem. Do you know that? That's classic Pareto right there. So, you know, it's recreation and the fleet. And I see that we're tackling the fleet big time, which is really, you know, we're being very aggressive on that. Very happy to see that. But just offhand, you know, because the other portion right behind us is the rec center. So are you following what they're doing right now as far as trying to reduce their, what initiatives are they working on? Is there a separate report that they have on that?
Thank you for your question. My understand they have their own plan, and Ian and I have discussed meeting with them now that we're working on their implementation planning. I know that they have some initiatives coming up that I have been hearing about, but that's one of the steps in our climate plan is to work with West Shore Parks and Rec on our climate action and on their plans.
So when we, so another question just related to our fleet, what we control. With everything that we're doing, I mean, this is phased in. We're not buying everything electrical tomorrow, obviously, but we're going to get there, and we're getting there on an accelerated side right now. And I think this is great. So what's that? So you have targets every year that you think we're going to be hitting. Have you guys determined what that is right now?
Just to get clarification, are you asking what targets we have for the fleet?
Yeah, so that, and how this affects this number here, because, you know, overall, it's what, 466, well, that's total, that's contracted to tons of CO2 we produce right now.
I don't have specific information on targets for our fleet, but I can consult with that department responsible and report back to council on what those targets are.
Yeah, it's all related, I guess, to what they're doing here, so. Okay, thank you very much. That was another excellent presentation, Carolyn. There's no recommendation on this one right now. This is just for information? Or, okay, thank you. Oh. Councilor
Thank you.
Jens?
I did have a couple of answers on your behalf. As the board representative for WSPR, there's a lot of stuff happening. And we receive a report monthly from the director, the administrator. And part of that is reports from staff about some of these mitigation strategies that are underway. So off the top of my head, without referring to any of those reports, some of the neat things that are happening right now are installation of heat pumps they're looking at for the Q Center, which will, I mean, it's a capital acquisition, but it will reduce the use of the existing air handling units for the Q Center, which can be quite hot. They're looking at an upgrade to some of the plant infrastructure, as in the ice plant, which again is going to mitigate some of this stuff. They just went around and did a whole bunch of lighting to these fancy LED units. So there's a lot of small things that are going on. Sorry, there's big ones that are in the works, and there's a lot of small things that have been underway as well. So they are live to this, and we as a board are working hard with staff to work in a similar direction. So I suspect you'll learn as much when you do meet with them. And I would suggest that they'd be prepared to meet and discuss this at any time. There's a lot of things underway. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor Jensen. Great update. Thank you very much, Carolyn. So can I, Josh, I'm just going to take a 5-minute health break here, and you're on. So 5 minutes, please, and we'll resume. Thank you. I'm back in the room, and we shall resume. It's over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the update to the city's sewer master plan began back in 2021. The work included an update to the sewer model, recommendations for sewer upgrades for the projected sewer flows, and proposing a strategy for converting the on-site septic services in town to a municipal sewer service. As discussed previously with council, the population projections are integrated into the plan. Based on average flows, we're estimating that there's room for approximately 3,300 additional units within the city within the existing CRD allotment for treatment capacity. The city would negotiate with the CRD for additional capacity before exceeding those allocated proportion. The master plan identifies two capital projects, project recommendations that includes the Machosen lift station upgrade and a force main extension. However, these are not included in the 5-year financial plan at the moment, as they're not projected to be required for a number of years, approximately 2040, depending on our growth rate. Additionally, the sewer master plan considers the possibility, as I mentioned, of implementing a septic system replacement program and presents capital project recommendations for council's consideration. If implemented, if implementation is desired, staff will engage council to establish a decision matrix for determining the future extension of the system for existing residents. The recommendation today is that staff be directed to use the 2022 sewer master plan update for master planning purposes and return with options for a phased septic system replacement program. There's more information in the report in front of you, but if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Thanks very much, Josh. Questions from council. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. Josh, I just have a question about, I guess, that number kind of worries me a bit. So I wonder, and maybe you won't be able to answer this, I don't know, but according to what we have in the works for homes and businesses that have been approved today and that are waiting to have sewer connection, have we, in a broad sense, used up that 3,300, that 50, that last percentage? Have we already used it up if we were to look at it in that terms?
Thank you for the question. Through your worship, I don't have the exact number of homes in Royal Bay and Royal Beach, but if those two were to be completely built out, yes, it would be, I think they're projecting upwards of 5,000 or something homes like that. The time frame for that build out is the big question. So that might not really come to existence for a good number of years, but that's why this 5-year master plan should be updated every 5 years to keep a watch on how quickly we're growing and where we are with that CRD allotment. We spoke about most of this at the previous discussion around the CRD's allotment, and we get yearly reports from the CRD, monthly, in fact, reports from the CRD on how much we're flowing and a yearly comparison as to where we're standing in our in that allotment.
So, sorry, just a follow-up question. How are we, or how are you guys allotting the, so the older neighborhoods and them coming forward asking for sewer connection and getting that approved? And is somebody keeping a tally on it all? And yeah.
Through the chair, we watch our usage. CRD gives us our reports. Right now, there is no formal process for sewering existing neighborhoods. So far, it's mostly developer driven. And so if there's a development within an old neighborhood, that developer may choose to extend the sewer, and we would use that like any other developer does. We have a few, although developer driven, we call them latecomer applications, where someone would install their sewer themselves and apply for a latecomer's charge, which would be allotted and charged to any homes on that street that would connect to it. But really, there's also a process where those homeowners on a street that want sewer could get together, get 75% sign on to have sewer extended down the roads, and then sort of have that cost applied to their properties that we have not really seen done. And so we're not typically sewering existing neighborhoods, and we watch the usage based on the CRD's reports monthly and yearly.
Sorry, and last question, if getting in there now and saying we're gonna need a bigger piece of the pie, is there any benefit to doing that now instead of waiting until we really need it? Thanks.
Good question through the chair. It's debatable, but right now we've already started engaging CRD to know what would that cost be for an additional megaliter of space, for instance. And their answer was, it's hard to calculate. We'd have to really know, and it would ultimately be a negotiation with other municipalities in sharing that total size of treatment. The cost for 1 megaliter, for instance, is about $2 to $3 million. And that's the level of estimate that we've been given from CRD. So in that cost, it includes those debt servicing that those municipalities, including us, have been paying on that initial fee that started being paid in, I think it was 2016 or so. So if we apply later, we have to we pay for that debt servicing piece, but it should be more or less a wash between then and now, because either we're paying someone else's debt servicing, or if we're paying for it through debt, then we're paying our own debt servicing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. A few questions, just so that I could try to understand the plan better. The report says that the estimated 2045 population has increased based on traffic zone population. Could you explain how that's different than what our OCP anticipates?
Absolutely. Great question. So this was done before the most recent Collier's population update. This started in 2021, and our consultant used these traffic zones. These traffic zones are typically used by the CRD themselves in estimating population densities, and they're fairly small zones. They're similar to our OCP zones, but some of them, the borders aren't perfect match to each other. So because of the most up-to-date data at the time, the KWL were the consultants in this. They used the more recent traffic zone data that came from the CRD, on top of which they applied the Royal Bay projections, the Royal Beach projections, and all the other, most up-to-date sanitary use projections we had, well, to date, as of 2022. So
I also noticed that when I looked through the appendices in the sewer master plan, that those developments, Royal Bay, for example, is referred to as Royal Bay, but we know there's Royal Bay and there's also Royal Bay Beach, which are both in the neighborhood of 2,800 homes each, I believe. So, and they're not delineated in there, whereas the septic conversion approach that they applied included actual drawings of where septic lines could go, junction points. I would assume some of those were sewer lift stations, but I wasn't getting too deeply into the details, just looking to see that there was little lines on the map. And so the three areas that were talked about being Royal Bay, Olympic View, and Ocean Grove as being big numbers of residences that require future service. There was no numbers associated with them on any of the appendices and no lines indicating where they would go. Could you explain that?
Thank you for the question. The line and the layout of those properties weren't included in these mapping. They're still in, technically in flux. But the densities were. So the Royal Bay Sewer Master Plan, OVs, all of those densities were, and the master plans themselves were provided as part of KWL's data package. So the specific lines through those neighborhoods are not on this mapping. Again, in 5 years, when we have a little more information, we have that data, we can then include it in the next update. But at this level, based on our available data, it made more sense to not include the line data on the mapping, but it does include the density and the flow rates.
Okay, and the next update to the sewer master plan is in 5 years. Did I hear that correctly?
That's the goal. As you can probably tell, this is a 2020, started in 2021, finished in 2022. Here we are in 2023. So yes, we would love to update these every 5 years.
Okay, and so my concern is that it also says that it will only be 6 to 8 years before we must have more capacity, and that we will have to work with the CRDs and neighboring municipalities to get a plan in place. So I like to work this problem kind of from the end back, being as we had an existing outfall. We put in a sewage treatment plant that's 108 megaliters. And now knowing that that plant is going to reach capacity, we need to make a plan for some other option. And a number of the lines within our area are going to be oversubscribed, including for the triangle lands. How are we going to coordinate our servicing needs for sewer with our development approvals? Like that's, I think, where we're trying to get to, is that sense of security that if we say that we can develop, however many homes in the triangle lands that might come forward, or the transit corridor densification on Soup Road, how do we know when we're going to actually incur costs that are, according to the report, in the millions in order to service those areas? So how are we going to coordinate our growth with our sewer capacity?
Thank you for the question. That does come down to this master planning, which we use the projected growth that we're given and we know is coming to project what our flows are going to be, as well as for those new developments, they're required to submit that sanitary sewer planning on a development scale, which we can compare against our flows, compare against our sanitary sewer model to see how that affects our systems.
Okay. But we're going to be getting reports sooner, I would imagine, than 5 years from now, when we're talking about 6 to 8 years before we really need to do something to address.
So that 68 years, you're quoting the sewer master plan itself. That assumes that we start sewering all of existing Colwood, today, and project that over the lifespan of this report, which is 25 years. So they're assuming in the next 25, 30 years, we would sewer all of existing Colwood. So that's where we would burn through that capacity very quickly, 5 to 8 years, when that's at this point, certainly an unrealistic timeline to sewer all of existing Colwood and all of our development that we see coming in.
Okay, so there will be a different type of approach rather than this septic conversion approach that's in the plan.
Yes, that's what we would come back to council if you wanted to investigate further with that very fulsome discussion around how and when and why we would sewer existing Colwood.
Okay, knowing that we're going to come back with lots more information in the future, I'm going to try to be brief. It's sort of my thing, the sewers. But I'm concerned about the size of the Latoria main. and whether or not that's sufficient, because that runs from Olympic View to Royal Bay and Royal Beach. And according to my investigation, it looked, but it wasn't identified as being oversubscribed in the sewer plant. And I'm just concerned about that.
You're right, it was not identified as being oversubscribed. I would have to look at this master plan is technically an update to a even larger master plan that was done through 2013, which
Yeah.
identified a few other other projects that would eventually be needed. I have those listed somewhere, but not memorized. Those two that I had mentioned, the Machosen lift station and the force main from that Machosen lift station up Machosen, were the ones that are identified within the scope of this master planning. So before 2045.
Okay. I will leave that with you then at this time, knowing that we have further work coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. I see reference to your septic system conversion, and I see, and I think what you're intimating in there, but I'd like just to focus in on what you might say to a homeowner of a 70s septic system that's making the decision right now, today, or this week, or maybe before the rains come, like urgently almost, but even someone who's looking at it, what would you say to them, this person faced with the decision between spending significant money on an upgrade to their septic versus waiting for the sewer that's coming? And what perhaps I think I want to understand how we might in City Hall offer them help with that decision. And I guess that's yeah. And if a group of people on a street in the middle of Wishart North or something, or South, I don't know, whichever, decided to go on sewer, would the city be able to respond with that? I know there are some have been added recently. I've seen them, but maybe your answer might touch on that too, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and through your worship. Yes, we do get those questions, all the time saying, my field is failing. Triangle Mountain is sort of one of those, the soils are not great for drainage. So those septic systems seem to be failing, now when there are older septic systems in town, which seem to be lasting much longer because of our fantastic drainage we have. Typically, brutal truth with most people calling in right now, there is no plan to sewer any of existing Colwood. As you know, there have been referendums in the past that have been knocked down. So it's not coming. The city has no plans to sewer any of those streets. So, don't hold your breath. Here are your other options. You could be a front ender if have the cash and the willingness to build it yourself and essentially put a latecomer's fee on everyone else who fronts that and hope that they connect in the next 15 years. You might make some money back. There's also that, as I mentioned earlier, the ability for a neighborhood to get together and get the votes to extend the sewer, and then the city could work with them to potentially do like an LAS in which the city would build that. But right now we haven't really been entertaining any of those applications right now. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. So I think maybe it would be fair to say to some of these folks that they should go ahead and upgrade their septic, because there's a good chance it'll be 30 years before, 40 years before they might see sewer. I'm trying to help these people come to some kind of answer, so they're not just doing an eeny, meeny, miny, moe at night for a $30,000-$40,000 decision. So that's what I'm going to conclude from what I've heard, not because I think it should be better, but because I hear what you're saying.
Mm.
And because I'm also speaking specifically about the homes that are on the well-perched sand and gravel geography, where the septic seems to work quite well.
Yes, so I have a call scheduled with a resident tomorrow to
Yeah.
let them know how this went. It's if council doesn't want to proceed with that or even investigate that, that's fine. That's been the status quo. And we can communicate that to the residents to let them know it's not coming, spend the 50 grand, you got to replace it eventually, might as well do it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I'm not trying to suggest that I will hold anybody accountable. I do tend to send them to City Hall to talk to the experts.
Yeah, sure.
But I get asked more and more frequently. It seems as if the housing stock is reaching the point where this is happening, and also perhaps it's a generational turnover of ownership of these homes, and which Colwood has a lot of, and which is a good thing, and they want to improve their homes. And part of that typically seems to come with a septic upgrade. So they're making their decisions. They want to do it while they have the crews on the house. It just it seems to be more and more people. Most weeks I get asked at least once.
Yeah.
About this question, and it's really difficult to just say, well, it's a bit of a, and I understand. I'm not trying to be smart. I appreciate the situation, and it's tricky, but
Well, that's even if council did want to investigate, as the recommendation says,
Yes.
come back to council, that time frame of when and how is still a very big unknown. As the report says, it's estimated in today's dollars to be $103 million to
Yes.
sewer all of existing. Increase that with time and, the rate of inflation, you're looking at a huge number. So I can't, that's all the
Yeah.
information I have. And that's all
No.
the information, I give all that information to anyone who calls in
sure.
so that they have as much information as we can share. with
Yeah,
them.
and I see what is available, and I appreciate it. Yeah, great. So thank you very much.
Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Josh. I'm sure these numbers are somewhere, so forgive me if they were right in front of me, but can you give us an idea of how many calls you're getting from members in the community of like people that are inquiring about whether or not they can have sewers? Like, how many groups are you seeing actually come forward looking for sewer in these older neighborhoods?
Thank you for the question through the chair. I don't know. We definitely have a call log that we'd be able to look and see how many calls we get about this. Typically it's someone else in our department that fields the direct calls about sewer, but I of course end up with at least a few of them. So maybe once or twice a month, I'll end up speaking to someone who just wants to know. And it's those people that, hey, my septic system's failing. Should I be replacing this, or how soon will I get sewers? I mean, when I was looking for housing, I was trying to look on Triangle Mountain, and my realtor told me like, oh, sewers are coming soon. And it wasn't until I started working here that I realized like that's not true unless there's a big change. So, people just want the information and want to know. No one's.
So I feel like it's pretty unclear for some residents, as somebody that,
Yeah.
I mean, I have septic.
Yeah.
And it works fine. Not everybody on my street has been
Yeah.
as lucky. But I would be curious to know when people are calling in and asking how they can move forward, are some of these people looking to potentially build accessory dwelling units on their property? Are they being limited because they have septic, you can't build over fields, things like that? Like, I would just be curious in seeing a little bit more data on the background of people that are actually calling and.
Yeah, I can really only speak anecdotally because of the way that people call in and just ask questions. We give them any information that we can at the time. And I can only speak to my personal experience on that one.
Thanks.
Your worship, if I may.
Please, Mr. Earl.
Thank you. If the motion were to pass tonight, as you can see, as explained, the back half of the motion asks council to direct us to return with options for a phased septic replacement program. And figure 6.1 within the master plan shows 57 different polygons that represent kind of a potential order in how we might do that. And should that motion pass tonight, we would return with, well, here's how we could do it. And how we could do it generally would be, we would dedicate a portion of our borrowing capacity. We'd borrow on behalf of one of those polygons. We would put the system in, and those bills would go back to the benefiters within those polygons. As described, to do all of Colwood would consume an amount of borrowing that's larger than our capacity to borrow. And so the reality is it can't happen in the near term, but excuse me, should the motion pass as recommended tonight, we hope to lay out for the community some clarity on the order in which it might happen. And could it be a 10-year rollout, a 20-year rollout, a 30-year rollout, to try to create some foundation of expectation?
Thank you very much. I'll just have just a couple questions here. Well, one of them you just answered. So the other one is, I was just trying to understand your math and how you got the numbers here. On page 2 of 4 in the report, you talk about the population projections, and I was following that, and then the next thing then you say the average household uses 615 liters per day, and then the next thing you say this equates to room for additional 3,300 units before the CRD allotment is exceeded. So I'm sitting there going, okay, so how did we get from these numbers to this number? So you do this based on the number of doors. I'm taking it right, 615 liters per door. Is basically correct?
Basically, yes, we assume, I think it's 2.5 people per unit. And then each person has a flow rate associated.
So based on that, so I just wanted to understand this 3,300 additional units. So you've already taken into account what we know is happening in on Beachlands, Royal Bay, Olympic View, and all the things that we know now. Plus, we got another 3,300. I want to really understand that.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
This is based on today's flow rate. So what was flowed to the CRD in 2022, we have as a record. And then from that, we have the existing 2.03 megaliters per day capacity. That, for demonstration purposes, equates to about 3,300 units.
so in essence, the finishing of Royal Bay or the finishing of Beachlands will use that capacity.
Yes, unless we see a reduction in flows from our reduce in INI, anything like that, might reduce our current flow rate.
That was my understanding before, but I just want to go, okay, I want to make sure I understood that. Sure. That's great. Okay, on that note, the recommendation on the floor is that direct staff to use the City of Colwood's 2022 sewer master plan update for master planning purposes and return with options for a phased septic system replacement program. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone want to make the motion to move that? Okay. Grove, seconder, Councillor Torgerson, sorry about that. Sorry, Kim. Discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I just want to flag that I would hope there would be options, including deciding on smaller numbers of septic conversions based on if that 3,300 units that we currently have room left for is 2.5 people per average household, then just rough numbers saying that Colwood's roughly 20,000 people now, that adds another 8,250 people. And that's much fewer than what the population increases are that's anticipated by the traffic zone populations. So it just may leave us having to decide who is the most beneficial recipient of septic allotments. Based on that, older homes in older neighborhoods have an opportunity to upgrade an existing septic system, whereas new growth on small lots in transit-friendly areas may be sewer may be the only option for them. So I just wanted to flag that may be a choice that we need to consider when your report comes forward.
Thank you. Councillor Torgerson, remembered you this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, Josh, I just wanted to ask, and maybe ask the council table, I don't know, can we just turn up the dial on this a bit? Like maybe we should be, so if you look at the grand picture, the province is asking all of us to build housing, build, build, build. No money's coming for infrastructure, no money's coming for sewers, no, they're not handing out money for that kind of stuff. So we're kind of on our own, and everybody's gonna be in the same boat with build, build, build and using up their sewer. Do we want to be last in line to go and say we need more sewer? Like, it just worries me a little bit that we are so close, or we could be so close in getting to that. So I just don't know if we need to be having, not maybe those negotiations, but getting in there first and saying we want a piece of the pie first. I don't know.
It's a good point. Mr. Rowan, just can I ask a question? Have you started, has any conversations even started with the other municipalities about potentially tagging into their flows, their authorized flow rates?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Mr. Andrews has described, we've already begun the conversation with the CRD, and we signaled to them our beliefs surrounding our population growth, our understanding relative to the year 2045, at which they will be expanding the capacity of the existing facility or building another facility, and how it's Colwood's expectation that we will consume our 3,300 before the year 2045, and what steps should we take as a municipality to help the CRD provide the capacity that we'll be asking for. So they're aware of our concern, and I believe we have let them know that we would like to have our piece of the pie when we want it.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, it's unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Great presentation, Josh. Tyler, you're up next. Talking to us about stormwater master plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so in 2018, the city of Colwood engaged McElhaney Consulting to develop an update to our 1991 Stormwater Master Plan. And subsequently, McElhaney performed investigations and flow monitoring in 2020 and 2019 to calibrate the model that was developed as part of the 2018 Master Plan. The Master Plan provides analysis of the city's existing stormwater system and models it for current and future climate scenarios. As part of this model, the plan recommends a 10-year and 20-year capital projects plan to address the condition and capacity related shortfalls identified in the model. In addition to this, the plan also speaks to stormwater quality, enhancement of natural assets, and recommendations for low impact development and best management practices. What staff are looking for today is endorsement of the 2018 Stormwater Master Plan and 2020 Model Calibration Technical Memo for master planning purposes, and intends to return with a capital project plan intends to return with a capital project plan during the financial plan review. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tyler. Questions? Councillor Jordison.
Hi, Tyler. I just had a question that Mr. Dennis, I think it was, that mentioned about the storm sewer master plan and it's holding up, I guess, development along Souk Road. And I'm just wondering where that might be prioritized in this plan, or if it is.
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Thanks.
So the plan does identify, as Mr. Andrew has spoken to, a capital project that runs through the property at the corner of Souk Road and VMP. That has its weighting within the 2018 Stormwater Master Plan. But when staff do come back during the financial planning review, we'll have a more fulsome list of the intended capital projects because there's been a lot of changes since 2018 plan. And that is an excellent opportunity for council to speak to that project and its weighting in this plan for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day. Oh, sorry. Come on, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tyler's correct. We will bring that back as part of the master planning for the capital projects, but that particular project, that sewer line, we actually have an SRW that runs through 2 private properties there. So those properties right now, my understanding is we have had a conversation with one of the developers. And one of the things they're trying to do is purchase other properties in that area. When they do that, it is an opportunity through that development for the city to get that pipe realigned through the development of the properties as opposed to us paying for capital. So we will bring that further information for council to decide whether, so development could drive that capital replacement or we could drive that capital replacement. One way we pay, the other way the developer pays as part of that development and the rezoning that would be required. So it could be a negotiated outcome where we have it done through that development. Just thought I'd add that piece.
That's a great heads up. Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. One of the recommendations in the stormwater master plan, stormwater plan, is it recommends that the city engage a stream ecologist or biologist for a triple bottom line assessment of natural systems, which I think is really important and part of what I was hoping to be able to tease out of that report. However, its graphs and details are way more technical than I could deal with in terms of understanding what the benefits are of the natural systems that I know exist and have been augmented over time with big pipes through different parts of the city that we may need to understand better over time, as historically we have had issues with some of those pipes being either too old or forgotten about for too long, that they had degraded to a point that they were causing problems. So I'm just wondering, is that something that will come in a future recommendation, or is that something that we should be embarking on sooner?
It's a great question. So endorsement of the master plan and us returning with the capital projects upgrade plan, this is definitely something that's being considered to be as part of that plan that we come back for funding for. Because as you said, the master plan speaks to the technical capacities of these natural systems, but doesn't speak to the biology and stream ecology of them. And that's a very important aspect that needs to be identified. So yes, we will return that.
Great. So it is coming in the future iterations of using this plan.
Yes, it's not maybe a hard project. As like the infrastructure plan will have pipe upgrades and all that, but this will be a project that's identified with that.
Yeah, I found it a little, I mean, there's some big pipes in Colwood that I happen to know about because dogs and children could fit in them, and I had to make sure mine weren't lost in them. But because of that, I sort of looked to see, well, I know about the ones I know about, and can I see them on the plan? And I couldn't. So I'm just hoping we can maybe, that it will be more transparent in the future, that more laymen like myself will be able to see and understand what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion for the recommendation A? Okay, that's Jensen and Olson. Discussion? Question? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you.
Kathy, you're on. You got all the hard questions too.
Oh, no, I hope not. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the very long report. So this is before you, the consolidated second quarter financial update and capital update. These are the actuals to June 30th, and then we projected the numbers out to the end of the year. And we are projecting a surplus of $261,000 to the end of the year. Those numbers the projections, of course, will be refined when we present the third quarter update targeted for November. So you will see that general operating revenues are projected to exceed budget at 102%. And this is driven by favorable interest rates that are delivering investment income over that was budgeted. But total revenue is a little bit under budget, and that's mainly because of developer contributions where we saw one large project not proceed this year so far, and the deferral of capital expenditures because those drive, as we proceed with some of that spend, we see the offsetting grant revenues, et cetera. Core operating expenses are projected to finish the year under budget at 98%. And explanations for variances to budget are provided in all of those service areas. Some common themes, of course, because salaries form such a large part of our spend, are around vacancy provisions, not provision, but experience, and also the adoption of the 50th percentile philosophy for compensation. And as well, there were consistently increases to supply and hydro rates we'll see through a number of service areas, driving some overages. So staff are continuing to closely monitor budgets till the end of year. Accordingly, special initiatives are only at 60%, and that is mostly because you'll see in the narratives, but we deferred a lot of those works to focus on works that were already underway. Transfer from reserves and capital expenditures are both under budget. And again, that's driven by the delays in proceeding on some of the capital initiatives. And then capital within that document itself, road infrastructure is under by 3.6 million. And that is due primarily to the sidewalk and bike lane pause until next year, as well as the Machosen at Latoria intersection 800K, the Royal Beach piece of that work, and the deferral of DCC works, the additional ones at the end of the year to 2024. Facilities are under by 350,000, and that's driven by actually the only projects in there, which was the Public Works facility and Goldfinch. And drainage is under by 894,000. That's primarily driven by the work at Perende, which was 700,000 of that, and then the pause on the Colwood Creek, Allendale of 194. That's because we're waiting to proceed on that work until we get the grant funding approved. And then Parks and Rec is under by 2.5 million. That is driven by the waterfront stewardship project of 2.2 and the Colwood Creek implementation 0.4. That's the one. Sorry, did I just say that? Sewer is over by 163 million capital, and that's because on the Bexhill work, there was unforeseen gas line and CRD water main requiring sewer line realignment. So it is a good news story. We are projecting a surplus of $261,000, and there is no financial plan amendment required at this time to support operations. And the recommendation is that council receive these financial updates.
Thank you very much.
I'm pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, great. I'll open the floor for questions. Councillor Jensen, if you want to push a button. Perfect.
Sorry, I was just gonna move receipt, your worship. Thank you.
Can I get a second? Okay, Councillor Grove seconds it. Open for discussion. I just got one question to ask you, Kathy. It's a real tough one. The new construction taxation, I know it's identified separately, but where is it on the statement, on the consolidated statement? I can't find it.
Yeah, all the taxation lines roll up under property taxes. It's just how we use those, all those factors roll up into taxation, and then we use those numbers to fund different pieces that they are supposed to.
Oh, I see. It's under property taxes then? Okay.
Yep.
I just I got confused there for a second.
No worries.
Any other questions? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Nope. Motion carried, unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm getting down to the- Oh my God.
Do I start before introduction?
Sorry?
Do I need the next agenda item to be announced? I'm here to present the recommendation for the
Okay.
appointment of external auditors.
Okay, sure, please.
Okay, thank you. So we did in the summer, as part of our objectives in finance, we did put out an RFP for audit services. That is for a 5-year term, and we do that normally. It's a common event for auditing services, right? To ensure that we are getting high quality audit service and that we are getting the best price and value combination for our money. So we received 3 responses to that RFP. The content is in the report before you. And we are recommending that we move forward with KPMG going forward. And if you would like me to read the recommendation, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation,
Okay.
Your Worship.
So is that second by, is that what you have your hand up for, Kim or Councillor Jordison? Right. Okay, so I'll just get the seconders, Grove, and then I'll open up for questions. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. Kathy, I just had a quick question about the recommendation, and it's just the second part where it says, and that there be an option to extend for 2 additional periods of 1 year each. And I'm just wondering, is that standard? Is like, why do we do that? I just was wondering. Yeah, that is a standard option, and we had that previously. Only we had a shorter term, although it's extended till 10 years in the end. It's just to accommodate work operations, and also often the relationship with the auditor can be favorable or unfavorable. And we have a good relationship. I shouldn't say that. I just mean there are circumstances where you do want new ideas and new input. And so this gives us the flexibility to continue without coming before council again, but also the opportunity to present council with a new audit arrangement after that 5 years. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Motion approved. And motion for adjournment. Councillor Day, you always want. And Councillor Grove seconds it. Discussion, all in favor? Motion approved, unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience.